let's move on to this morning's papers. Joining us this morning, I called him this earlier, I'll call it again, barrister extraordinaire, Andrew Eborn. Good morning.
Good morning, and what a joy to join both of you again.
Very nice to see you. You look like a grown-up now.
I do look like a grown-up now.
So earlier on, when I saw you in reception, you look like a teenager.
Oh, I've got this new puffer coat because I'm doing this whole thing about AI.
Let's not let him get away with this. He's got a new puffer coat and red trainers on.
It's good. Well, the red trainers match my eyes, which is great.
That's because you're a barrister.
Thank you. And the puffer coat is just all about AI, you know, the Pope in a puffer and that sort of stuff. So,
you weren't really wearing it?
No, it wasn't me at all.
I see.
Me, myself, and AI.
Very good.
Here all week.
You're very good. What a shame you're here. No, I mean, what a joy. What a joy that you're here all week. Let's just look at the front pages just before we come to Andrew. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph this morning. The front page of the Sunday Telegraph says Starmer piles praise on Thatcher to woo the right. I mean, this is an extraordinary article, and the fact is that clearly Keir Starmer can see the writing and exactly where that's going and wants to appeal to those Conservative voters. Have anyone got the Times there? Let's just move on to the Times front page now. I can't actually read that.
It says Rwanda's extra £45 million to seal the migration deal.
So this is the story about the fact that we've already spent £150 million on Rwanda. By the way, no one's gone there. So guess what? We're now throwing another 15 million quid at Rwanda.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Well, I mean, and cleverly is going to Rwanda. We'll talk about that later. The Daily Mail this morning. This is about the Omid Scobie article, the fact that we broke that here on Talk TV with Piers. The headline here is, now Harry is excluded from Society Wedding of the Year. This is the Duke of Westminster. He was once called Britain's most eligible bachelor because he's worth a few quid.
Someone snagged him.
Someone there definitely snagged him. But apparently Harry and Meghan not invited. They won't be very pleased with that.
Interestingly, both boys are godfather to his son.
Whoa.
Sorry, both boys are godfather to his son, so it's a difficult one for those...
Well, and actually, to be fair to the Duke of Westminster, he said, I just don't want the aggro,
exactly.
or words to that effect.
And given the choice, David, invite those two from over there or invite the entire royal family to your wedding.
I'd invite the royal family, yeah. And then we'll do one more. The Mirror this morning, Royals unite on the race row. We'll talk more about that Omid Scobie article as well a little later on. But now, over to Andrew. You've chosen some plum stories.
Well, there are lots of plum stories and all sorts of other fruits as well. And what I love about it is the cartoonists are brilliant at encapsulating a lot of the head stories. So I thought we'd actually start with Newman's Week this week because he summarises all the main sort of stories. I'll read you what it says.
Yes.
So the first thing is, my private jet enables me to get to address climate change issues quicker. This is all about COP28.
Has a point.
Everybody flying in on that sort of principle, which is a good point. They've also, not to avoid the royal rumpus, they've got a picture of some courtiers saying the royals aren't racist, just look at the black sheep in the family. There you go. So work on that basis. Lord Elgin.
That's slightly on the line, yeah.
It is slightly on the line. The British Museum shop, they've got a picture of a couple of punters, one of whom stealing a book about the Parthenon, and it basically said it's what Lord Elgin would have wanted. Pretty good.
This is about the Elgin marbles,
What about the Elgin marbles, that sort of story?
Which aren't marbles.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been there. It's glorious. Isn't it? I was up in Athens very recently.
Right.
And it's an interesting story, isn't it?
It's an amazing story. It's very odd that Rishi Sunak kicked off about...
It's very odd.
Very odd. And I don't know what was behind that and why he lashed out and decided that he would pick a fight with the Greeks.
I think there are a few other things that should have been on top of his list that week.
There were other things. They were supposed to discuss other issues, and they did offer up somebody else to go and meet with the relevant person. But the interesting thing is, I like the idea of the king and the idea of him wearing the Greek flag on his tie.
We had a discussion about this in my house yesterday afternoon. I think it was deliberate.
Of course it was deliberate.
Colin thinks it was just he liked that tie.
I think they are so clever. Do you remember what it reminded me of when the Queen, our previous Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, do you remember when she talked about in her Queen's speech, and it was about Brexit was about to happen, and she wore this glorious hat which looked like the EU flag. Do you remember that? I'm sure we can dig out the picture there.
Yes.
But it reminded me of that. So they're very clever, even though they're not supposed to comment on these sort of things. I think everything that's done is done deliberately.
There is no way he wore that tie by accident. No.
Colin's just a kind-hearted soul.
It's all Greek to me.
Yes,
absolutely, and you can work on that sort of basis. So no, I think they're very clever, and they work on that sort of thing as well, which is good. They've also got one here, which is a wonderful thing as well in here. This is talking about King Charles. In 2050, our grandchildren will not ask what we said. They will be living with the consequences of what we did or didn't do. This is him speaking at COP28 in the UAE. So I'm getting legal advice, he says, about the Endgame. So glorious stuff. Interesting things about the royals. It's over every single paper, not surprisingly.
Yes, it is.
I know you're going to be unpacking this. In the Mirror, they talk about the royals standing united. And Matt Cartoon, we should never miss out a Matt Cartoon. What he says on the front page of the Telegraph, AI will never replace authors like Omid. There are some things that ChatGPT refuses to do.
So there's a really interesting op-ed by Piers Morgan as well today in The Times. And he's, again, eviscerating of Harry and Meghan and actually of Omid Scobie because he also talks about how on earth did this happen. And basically this was all predicated on the fact that we really don't know who said what to whom, how it ended up there. How on earth does something that you didn't write end up in the Netherlands, which was then
translation
that then was translated?
But it's Robert, sorry, how does translation work? My definition of translation doesn't mean inserting names. What's that? What was it translated from? Quite interesting. But it all goes back to the Oprah thing, doesn't it? And when we first saw that interview, we said who, how, what, where. Any journalist worth their salt would ask those sort of questions when presented with all sorts of accusations. We've now got an alleged who. And I think it's... and the trouble with this sort of situation is they haven't been able to respond. They're not responding in the same sort of way. They're all standing together, united. But it raises a couple of issues, and it goes back, in a way, to Lady Hussey as well, and comments that people might make. So the first thing is, firstly, did they say it? Secondly, were they the right people? Were they the two people who did say it? But thirdly, is it racist?
Yes.
Well, that's right.
Did it have racist intent?
Was there intent?
Yes.
Was there intent? And I loved Abraham Lincoln, who used to dine out on these things. He always used to say, counting the tail as a leg, how many legs does a dog have?
5.
Well, the answer's still 4, because just because you call a tail a leg doesn't make it so.
Thank you very much.
I
He's
thank
right.
you. Isn't that good? Thank you.
It's a bit early for
I'm
this.
here all week. No, but I'm not any excuse to bring in these topical jokes. He's right about just putting a label on somebody doesn't make them so. So we need to look at some things.
Piers and I argued over many things over COVID online, but in terms of this and his stance on this, he is absolutely 100% right. In my opinion, and I speak as a mother of a mixed-race child, the conversation, whoever did it, whoever said it, however they said it, was not racist. And secondly,
I agree.
These two want to bring down the royal family. And they're in a very difficult situation now, because they either have to say we collaborated with him, he's right, or they have to discard him and set him out to sea and say no.
At which point he's a loose cannon.
And they have to say that didn't happen.
And so Piers has said, Piers has absolutely said the silence from those two is deafening.
It is.
And it is.
I know you're absolutely right. And they're going to sort of turn around. If ever there was a time to turn around and say, whether it's them or not, we didn't feel it was racist. What Harry has actually said, they've never used the word racist. He's turning around and saying that the media...
Unconscious bias.
To be fair, he changed, he pivoted, didn't he? Because there were... they insinuated racism and then they pivoted towards unconscious bias.
Probably because Harry didn't want to call his father and his brother and his sister-in-law racist, I imagine.
Well, I'm not sure. But if you... OK, you're in their position. You could be Harry, you could be Meghan.
Right.
What would you do now?
Now?
Well, yes.
Well, I wouldn't have started it for the...
Well, too late.
Oh, right, okay.
We are where
if
we are.
It's a lie, which I think it is, I would absolutely distance myself from Scobie.
What bit do you think is a lie?
I'm not convinced that these conversations happened. Okay. I'm not convinced that the royal family are... No one's convinced me. They haven't given me any evidence.
Well, as a barrister, and obviously we tread a tricky path, and the media treads a tricky path. Piers decided that it was in the public's interest. Actually, in his article, he says it's absurd the Dutch people should be privy to significant information where the British public pay for it.
Piers quite rightly says, and I watched him when he publicly did it, and glorious moment to lead up to it. He sort of said, it's our royal family. If anybody's going to know, we should know.
Right. And then he went on to say this farrago has gone long enough, but also... he says holding these names out is almost like a blackmail over the royal family, and so it's only right that they're out in the open. Now, legally, that opened a number of questions for us as an organisation.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, and the Sunday Mirror also talk about this, about the potential defamation thing.
Indeed.
And the biggest defence to defamation is it true? And the question is, firstly, are the names, go back to what we said beforehand, are the names right? But secondly, we don't know the context.
We don't.
And I've heard many people phoning into this channel and various other people around the world saying, actually, in mixed-race families, they have this conversation.
We had the conversation.
Any family has that conversation about the attributes of the father and the mother. What is the child going to look like?
Yes. Do you know, it would have been perfectly reasonable for the royal family to discuss whether or not Harry would have red hair, because Earl Spencer has red hair.
Yes.
That would not have been a racist comment.
And I do think perception and reality are so rarely aligned, and you have to look in this day and age at intention.
But also,
and I hate labels on that basis.
Is it not upon them, Harry and Meghan, to give us the evidence? They can't make these accusations without evidence. So until I have the evidence, I can't believe it.
Because there probably isn't any, is there?
Well, no, but there'll be somebody who heard the conversation. And, well, firstly, as I say, we don't know.
We don't know.
Nobody knows other than...
And that's the only certainty, is that we don't know. And we don't know what we don't know.
And exactly. Well, I know what I don't know. I know what you don't know, I can tell you.
Exactly.
The reality is this, however, is that you need to get... The evidence would turn around and say, well, what is the intention? Even if it did happen... are those the relevant people? Yes. What was the context and so on and so forth? And I do think in this day and age, we need to look at intention. We're living in a diseased information age where people are basically trying to find stories to support their own prejudices.
I mean, if Meghan comes up with evidence that says somebody in the royal family approached her and says, I'm very concerned that your child might be a bit too dark for the royal family, that is racist.
Correct.
But we need to see that.
And, I mean, there are two big headlines, as you say. The Mirror says Royals unite on race throughout. The Sunday Express says Charles, I'll never give up on Harry. I think William has.
Well, I don't know. Again, these are brothers and siblings and families fights.
I know from my brother we argue.
No, every family argues. There's nobody watching at the moment who would turn around and say they don't argue with their family members.
No.
The trouble is, and this is why I sometimes try and speak out to address the balance, with Harry and Meghan, I try and speak out as much as possible because so many people have a pop at them. The reality is that every family has issues.
Do you think there is any way back for them?
I do. And I do think...
what advice would you give them right now?
I would focus on the really good stuff, like the Invictus Games I think is superb.
So do I.
I think what Meghan does, and this is the problem that's been sort of sidelined a bit, talking about mental health, as Harry's done as well, without sort of people dismissing it as saying, oh, it's a cry for help. The reality is the more people in the public eye who can speak about mental health, the better.
Agreed.
I want us to be the generation that talks about mental health so the next generation doesn't suffer.
But how do they turn this around?
I was just going to say, surely they cannot focus on those things and get positive publicity until they stand up as a couple, they address this, and actually they distance themselves from this man, Omid Scobie, who is making his millions on the back of these stories.
I mean, look, people are messaging saying regarding H&M of Montecito, empty vessels create the most noise.
Well, no, but the reality, and how many people are writing and saying, I support Harry and Meghan, and this is why I'm trying to redress the balance. It is very easy, you want to basically draw a crowd, you start a fight. Basically, there was media everywhere. If you talk about Harry and Meghan, you talk about Trump, which you spoke about a little bit earlier before the Glory show started. I love the show before the show, by the way.
The makeup show.
I know, the makeup
we have
show.
A show in the
that's
makeup
the show
room.
you should watch. We're going to camera in there.
No, it's not allowed.
But what I love about it, that's what happens. If you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. And it's very easy. Social media bursts a blood vessel. When you turn around and talk about Harry and Meghan, you talk about immigration, you talk about Trump, all of these are hot topics. People approach each of those topics with their own prejudices. And what I always believe is that we should shine more light and less heat. There is good in everybody. And if you look at the media cycle, take it back a few years, Meghan was the darling of everybody.
Answer the question. What do they do?
Answer the question.
I'm now the barrister.
Thank you.
Answer the question. What would you advise Harry and Meghan to do right this minute?
I would turn around and focus on the positive side. And the positive side is the work that they're doing, the work that Harry's doing on the Invictus Games is fantastic. We should do more of that. I think Meghan, who's also, I think, got presidential ambitions, which I've said beforehand, I think she's turned around and focused on the good. She's also got
America's got enough trouble.
But she's also got her PR team. The PR team need to work on this on a basis.
They can't do this.
As you know.
I'm sorry, Andrew. They cannot just suddenly make everybody forget these accusations and concentrate on the Invictus Games.
They should say, we've heard these allegations. We're not bothered. We need to move on.
They're nothing to do with us.
They're nothing to do with us, exactly.
But wait, that may not be true. And what you shouldn't do is not tell the truth. So what you can do is turn around and
tell a non-truth to cover a potential non-truth.
Lie travels around the world really quickly. The reality is this, is that if they did have that conversation, but they haven't used the label racist, it's the conclusion which has been drawn as a result of what may or may not have happened. And that's the important thing. Same way as I always feel sorry about Lady Hussey. I know it's an older story.
Terribly.
But do you remember that sort of thing? And I think she was an old lady married to Marmaduke Hussey, former chairman of the BBC. Glorious. And going round trying to make sweet conversation, I don't think she has a racist bone in her body.
Neither do I.
But
and
you know
the
what?
way she was sidelined and treated badly by the media and
Try and imagine this reversed, and you know, somebody actually criticising the King of Nigeria for having a white wife and being worried about the colour of his baby in Nigeria. It wouldn't happen.
No, it wouldn't.
Only here are we so determined to destroy the royal family, and
but it's backfired, because I actually don't think it will destroy the royal family.
It won't destroy them. We need somebody on our stamps. I mean, you've got to work.
You'd look great.
I would look good.
I'm ready.
I look good.
Renee would look great.
It would be fantastic. I'll tell you what, the three of us.
The three of us on stamps.
First, second, and
Three musketeers.
First class male.
Who's third class? Anyway, let's move on. Time, Andrew, stay where you are, because we've only scratched the surface. Let's take a short break. Andrew will be back just after this break. This is Talk TV. Welcome back to Talk Today. The time 7:45. The conversation still continuing. Lots of messages coming in. David, I'm loving your waistcoat. Thank you very much. But loving Renee's jumper even more. Could you ask... Thank you. Could you ask her to reveal where she purchased yesterday's pink one, please? That's Alison.
Marks and Spencer's, but last year, I'm sorry.
Maybe they've got a new one this year.
They have. I'm wearing it.
Oh, that's the new one. Are you sponsored by M&S?
No, but they have nice Christmas jumpers.
Yes,
There you go. Very good.
I need some Christmas jumpers, actually.
Well, I don't know about the men's department. I didn't go in the men's department.
Funny
but
that.
can I read one about your waistcoat?
Oh, yeah, you can, as long as it's nice.
Morning, David and Renee. This is from Max Scott. As usual, you have kick-started my brain going this morning, but I must ask, read David's waistcoat. Why was there no pre-show warning about flashing lights?
Well, I agree with that. It's actually much shinier on screen than I realised when I put it on this morning. David, it's amazing looking at your waistcoat, what tailors can do with wrapping paper. Thank you, Vincent. Very kind. And John says, Andrew, another musketeer, such a good partner for your show. Isn't that nice?
Oh, well, I am a musketeer, an Elon musketeer. I love him as well. It's got to be good. And what
Does everything have to come back to AI?
No, well, possibly, because that is. I am back to the futurist. I think.
I know you are.
What I loved about his wonderful waistcoat as well. I was pointing this out earlier. It looks like the Conservative logo, doesn't it? It's got that sort of tremendous look about it.
I think that's when they went wrong. I think when they ditched the torch,
when they
went
gave
to the
you
tree.
their logo.
Anyway. Yes, Andrew, I'm just being told it's tremendous.
I did that.
Oh, you did that gag? You did that gag.
I charged royalties. That's what I said.
Oh, sorry.
Branching out. They twigged a bit earlier, didn't they?
Very good. I just glazed over.
I think Jackie has a very interesting point. Considering that our country is broken, the elderly are freezing to death in their homes, the ordinary person couldn't care less about ginger and bracket. It's a media obsession,
I agree.
which is predictable and boring.
I totally agree. Let's very quickly, because time is tight, let's move to The Observer. This is about Rishi Sunak, COP28. He's all over the shop.
Well, it is a bit of a 2 and 8. It's a bit of a state, isn't it? It's a fair cop, as they would say. So the leaders are branding Sunak as a hypocrite on fossil fuels. That's basically what they're saying. And they're deriding his call to phase out fossil fuel after backing the North Sea oil.
This is Rosefield, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all very predictable, as we said at the very beginning. This is why I do the Newman's cartoons. You can catch it. They all fly in to talk about climate change. They can all do it via Zoom. They could do it, have a little debate programme here. We managed to make that make sense. The reality is exactly that. You're always going to have that sort of issue. Looking at these things, they're calling themselves the Green Party, but you're going to have to look at how we're going to deal with the other bits and pieces as well.
I know, and how it affects people actually, and the cost.
The whole COP thing is hypocritical.
Yeah, of course it is.
All of it. I'm sorry.
I agree.
And it really is very wealthy people talking to very wealthy people about how they can make money in the future off of the backs of poor people.
Yes, who can't afford to do what they want them to do. The Sun. Euro 2024 draw. What happened there?
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
We didn't get the draw we wanted. I can tell you.
Well, we didn't do that as well. So what it is, I've discreetly folded Scream Team, and Wales will play Germany. So what this is, the Euro 2024, anybody who was listening to the draw yesterday, there was yet another sex noise prankster. Now, you might recall a little while back, somebody's put a telephone underneath, I think it was Match of the Day, and all of a sudden Gary Lineker could hear these grunting noises and all sorts of things. things. And it was like hilarious. Ha ha ha. You know, if you're a schoolboy,
I was about to say very schoolboy.
It's all totally schoolboy as opposed to schoolgirl. All the people giggle about all this sort of stuff. Same sort of thing happened in the draw for the Euro 2024 footy last night. It was ambushed by a prankster playing sex noises. And so you can listen back to this as they're trying to keep their very serious face.
Let's not. It's very early.
Far too early.
And here's a clip we're not going to play.
No.
It's pretty good. But that was the idea. And it's the same prankster who did it last time. So this is what he does. And his name is called Jarvo. So if you want more witticisms and grunting noises...
Jarvo, that's a very public school
name. It's very
name.
public. So, but nettles at dawn. I love it.
OK, and finally,
yes.
This is about parent power. Tips to deal with a teenager.
Isn't that good? So what happens in the wonderful Sunday Times, which is always full of glorious stuff. I can't
send them to boarding school.
Yes.
Don't have them.
Get rid of your children and send them back where they can earn some money. That's basically it. That was the top tip.
There you go.
19 tips. So what they're basically saying is that this is how you can deal with teenagers, trying to understand them. As you know, we want to try and bridge the gap between the communities. I think the more that we've evolved as a thing, the more people that the smartphones has made us dumber, and it's got rid of society. So what this is saying, 19 tips, including understand where they're coming from. You know, they say the biggest concerns parents have are for the happiness of their children, the safety of their children, and then the success of their children. And children want to be worried about their friends, their appearance, including social media, and then their school. They're saying try to relate to them and make sure you've got various things, involve them with the family, have discussions, go on walks together, and so on and so forth. So all sorts of wonderful tips we can go through all 19 depending on time.
But I'm going to throw in here that's not going to happen if you've never done it with a 15-year-old. That needs to start from when they're very young, so that they are close to you. There's a very good book by Maciej Gabor called Keep Your Kids Close.
Yes, and be open. Have open conversations about everything.
But all the stuff that doesn't seem very serious to adults is very serious to teenagers, isn't it?
And perception and reality are rarely aligned. It's just what we said beforehand. Just putting labels on things doesn't help. The more we can communicate, the better the world will be.
I agree. I think the role of the uncle and aunt is important as well.
Somewhere
I think you're
to
a very
go
good uncle.
Yeah.
My nephews and nieces, I think, can talk to me about stuff they can't talk to their parents about. And that's a really nice place to be, actually, because I can be ridiculous and ask them questions.
You being ridiculous, David?
Yeah.
That will never happen.
that would never happen. Andrew, thank you very much.
Lovely to see you both. Thank you.
Really lovely to see you as well.